The anti-war movement got a considerable amount of steam during the 60s, especially one that was most famous made in Woodstock, where they had this large music festival, but it's under the guise of peace and love and making sure that we get out of the Vietnam War. It's just that once we expanded the war effort in Cambodia, now Americans were just adamantly angry, we were just sick of it all, and we wanted to get out of Vietnam right then, right there, right now. There was no more support for this war. This definitely became a certainty when the Kent State protests happened. When these protests happened at a college called Kent State, this is a college in Ohio, you had these protests that had already gotten very demonstrative, very aggressive, I used to say. When these Kent State protests happened, what happened was that you had this mob that just started to grow in significant numbers, and they started going towards the National Guard, towards this hill. And so as they were approaching the National Guard, many of the National Guard there felt that they were getting cornered. And unfortunately, the people in the National Guard that were holding the line at the time, they felt like they were getting too aggressive, and they opened fire. They opened fire on these protesters. And when they opened fire, many people got hurt. In fact, 4 people died. And America saw this. And how America interpreted this action is that you had the government trying to silence their freedom of speech, that you had the government trying to silence their way to express themselves, and that people died trying to express their displeasure against the government. And once they saw this, and they viewed this as a national tragedy, because it wasn't the fact that only 4 people died. That definitely was part of it, but what they viewed it as, it was a symbol that their voices were being oppressed, and the government was willing to kill to make sure that they couldn't speak out. That's how a lot of Americans felt. And you said, for a country that believes in freedom, you sure have a weird way of showing it. And this made Americans very angry and said, no, we're done with Vietnam. Now, if you don't do anything about it, we will make sure that we get rid of all you government officials that support the Vietnam War. After the Kent State Massacre happened, Vietnam was a lost cause. And now it was a certainty that we had to pull out. And Americans were not going to accept any government that was trying to silence their voices. And that's the significance of the Kent State Massacre, is that Americans felt that the government was trying to silence them, and they simply weren't going to have it.